Hi, and welcome to my channel, Paint Your Paradise. I'm Phil Clements. Please come along with me on this exciting journey where we turn this painting into a masterpiece in Barrington Tops, New South Wales, Australia. And I've got it to a point where I'm happy with what I've done and how I've done it. Now I'm going to use this painting as a technique to show you guys at home how I push the distance and create atmospheric perspective in the background, which is primarily this area here. This area here. Now, this waterfall, for example, which you can hardly see now, is going to be one of the focal points as the eye leads to this point and then flows and then flows. And then, of course, the main splash. Now, this is the background, and I want to be able to show light coming through that forest so that you're actually viewing the forest as you would see it in if you were really there. And then we're going to have this section here, which is part of the background, be pushed back further. So you've actually got 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers, 4 layers, 5, and then the foreground. So you've got 6 layers in this painting. And if I could put a 7th one in, that'd be excellent. So let's see how we go. Now, I painted this painting on site in plein air, Barrington Tops, New South Wales, Australia. And this is about 5-6 months ago now. But the colours I'll be using for the painting will be, we've got sap green, we've got brilliant green, we've got cadmium yellow light, we've got orange, we've got well, I'm going to use raw umber and also yellow oxide, but that's yellow oxide, and a touch of cyan, and of course titanium white. I also use a little tiny bit of dioxazine purple, just in relation to putting more depth into the painting, in relation to creating the atmosphere by way of a mix of burnt umber and dioxazine purple. Gives you a beautiful dark colour, rather than black. No, black just kills everything. We don't want to do that. So I'm really excited about it. So this is going to be lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 will be detailing this section here, which will be, we'll call it the mid-ground, with the beautiful, showing you how to actually paint the waterfall, so it makes it look like it's 3-dimensional and flowing through. At the moment it's very flat, so this is it's a lot better than this. And then you've got the water here, which is splashing on the rocks. That'll be detailed as well, just give it some depth of field again. And then finally, it'll be lesson number 4, which will be this palm here, which will start to sort of come out there. We might even put one over on this side yet, I'm not sure about that, just to sort of try and create a little bit of a natural framework in the painting. So I hope you enjoy this. I know I'm going to love the painting. This is exciting again. It brings back all the old memories of me. Actually, I remember I was sitting on, where was it? It's a rock. It was on this side. If you imagine that it comes around this way, and there's a rock here that I was sitting on. And I kept repositioning myself while I was painting it, and I kept sort of trying to sit on the rock because it was, a bit difficult. And I ripped a hole in my jeans, and I remember there was about 60 or 100 people, I don't know, watching me. But I basically got up and I realised that I had a bit of air coming, from the back there, and I realised I'd ripped my jeans. So that was a bit interesting. So I had to make a little bit of a political departure there. But yeah, that's one of those things, little memories that just capture. But I still remember the birds and all the beautiful, the flora and fauna. Absolutely fantastic place. Barrington Tops, New South Wales. If you haven't been there, guys, seriously, awesome place to paint. Yeah, let's jump into it. So if we mix a little bit of the sap green with the dioxazine purple, we actually get this beautiful hue of colours. Now let's just watch how we do this. We mix it with titanium white, and we get these kind of tones that look something along those lines. So then if we apply that colour just as a sort of a sketch almost. We want to create that layer there. There's a layer there at the back there. We'll probably have some, might even have some sort of light coming through there. Maybe I'll even use a little bit of sky blue, not much, just enough that it creates a bit of a depth. So we've got that light coming through there. And then if the light is hitting from the left-hand side of the painting, so from here across. So what we'll do is we want to pick up, even at this early stage, the foliage design. And that's what I call it. It's basically picking up all of the little bushes and shrubs and things that you can see, but the highlight on the left-hand side of each. So that it's creating all these little curves and shapes to the foliage. So just very gently tapping that to the point where it becomes, it shows a little bit more of shape. Now keeping the saturation very low at this point. What we're doing is we're actually going to be using hardly any colour, just enough that it creates this sort of almost a neutral grey, but we're not using any black and white, so we're just using a mix of these tones, only these tones, just so we can give that full depth. Now if we follow this across here, we actually come across some of these beautiful little shapes here in the hill that will actually start to show depth. Now another little trick that I use too is to try and indicate just lightly where there might be this valley. So the valley forming at the top there, and what we're doing that way, we're actually giving it a bit of a visual aid to the viewer to understand and try and communicate the information, which is the depth of field. So look at that tiny little piece that I've put in here, and already it's started to basically show much more distance than what was originally there. So I've added Pacific blue to my repertoire just so I can indicate a little bit of the area where the light and the sunlight shining through, but I'm going to kill that off somewhat with the existing colour that I've already got. So I'm going to make this sort of tone here, and what I'm going to do is just sort of try and indicate where the trees go between the foliage layers that we've just put down. Nothing too dramatic and nothing too certain either. Very important about that. We don't want to have harsh lines, just nice soft lines that you can hardly make out, but from a distance you start seeing more detail, so you allow the viewer to use their imagination in what they can actually see. So I think that's getting the overall depth to it. I'll come back in a moment. I might put a tiny bit of sky just in there, maybe even a little bit more blue, not much. Tiny bit more blue just in there, just in this one patch here, so that I can create something over that later. There'll be a lot of detail in that one little spot, but I don't want to go overboard. It gives this idea of this valley, but it's probably a little bit too even. We don't want it even. Okay, there we go, just a few dobs. That's it. That's all we need. Perfect. Okay, that's nice. So now we'll go back to this tone we had before, and we're just going to keep a very similar colour, in fact, but make it slightly more saturated. In other words, it's more blending with what's there and showing the direction of light, but not going into any detail. And you can start to see that that hill starts to form then. I'm going to put another hill sort of here. Don't need too too dramatic at this point. I'll kill off those darker sections there. I'll just keep going with that for a while. And so I'm using this lovely Tischler brush, Andrew Tischler, absolutely brilliant artist. Please check him out on YouTube, fantastic stuff. Anyway, I've got this brush, which is from Rosemary and Co, and which is in England, and it's an Andrew Tischler series brush. It's a dagger brush. I've had it for years and years and years, but it picks up these lovely expressive marks that create this. It's a very difficult brush stroke to explain because it's so. We have a look. It's sort of weathered, but it's a dagger brush, and it creates all these little beautiful expressive marks. So I've made up a wash, very low pigment in relation to mainly water, in fact. And I'm going to brush it across the top of what I've just painted, giving it a very light coat with a fan brush, like that, and just trying to follow the little follow the forest. I guess that's the best description of it. So I'm just bringing in all of those beautiful little points of light that I brought in before, but now just trying to sort of soften the edges so you can't actually see anything too specific when it comes to the shape of the tree and so forth. Just breaking it all down and pushing it all back into the distance. And I'm doing that very gradually, just with, look, I'll probably have 2 or 3 washes over the top by the time it's finished. But you don't rush this, there's no real pigment involved. It's simply a matter of just taking your time. There's no rush. Just sit back and take the time. If you're working at home on this, or you're learning from this video, just take your time and enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy the process. And picture yourself there. I mean, this is beautiful location, Barrington Tops. I might even be holding a on-site art class on this one shortly, so I'll post that when the time gets a little bit closer. Now, I've now made too much of I've just added some more pigment, but it's a little bit too much, so I'll need to kill that off before I go any further. So I'm only dealing with practically water. So all of those lovely shapes that I've now made with the Andrew Tischler brush, I'm now highlighting the direction of light, trying to capture the foliage and the feel of the foliage in the forest. So if we zoom back a little bit, you can start seeing shapes occurring in the distance. Now, if we just gradually start to show those shapes, it'll create more realism to the artwork, and effectively it'll also give it that increase in the depth of field that we're looking for. So now you can clearly see a definition between the layers. See, here's the first layer I was saying, and then the second layer sits about there somewhere, and then there's the third layer. So I've turned that one section there into 3 separate sections. Similar happening over here. not to the greatest degree. You can see there's actually a part of a hill that comes down here, which is logical because there's the waterfall. So the hill has to be at that angle because the water will flow naturally down to that point. So it's coming along nicely. Okay, so now that I've done the background here, in relation to pushing the perspective and showing the atmospheric perspective, showing the distance, if you will, I now have the 1, 2, 3 different layers going back into the distance. Now I'm going to work on this layer here, which effectively is the waterfall. Now I'm going to refer to actual images as shown on the screen now. And these are images that I took at Barrington Tops whilst I was on site, and now I'm using as reference photos back in the studio. Now this section here is what we're going to focus on today, and in relation to that, that's going to be the waterfall. So what I'm going to do with the waterfall is this. I use titanium white, I use Pacific blue, I use dioxazine purple, and a tiny bit of Mars black. And I create all these lovely tones that I can then use as a background. So I'm going to use a mix of these two for starters. So I've got this sort of tone here, this grey colour. And working on my reference photo, I then do the background in a grey colour, and you sort of follow the hill. As the hill comes down, you follow it down. There's a little waterfall there, and then it hits on this ridge and comes down to there, that kind of thing. And then this one flows over again. Now notice that I've actually gone over this waterfall with a darker tone, just so that I can create more mood in the painting. So when I put the white on in just a moment, you'll see it pop. Now what I'm doing is I'm using the side of a brush. This is a 0.2, it's a Montmartre brush. You can see it there. It's quite a lovely brush, nice handles as well. And I'm using the side of the brush to give it that sort of flick motion. Now I'm not going to have any splash here because I want this hill to look like it's coming forward. And if you see splash, it gives it away in the distance. So now that I've got this second layer here, I'm going to put this top layer of the waterfall just spilling over the top like that. Just like that. And that's enough to really give the indication that there's little rocks and things going on there. That will probably be okay. So I've now got the waterfall. Now if we just use a tiny bit of blue, so now if I just use a tiny bit of Pacific blue and I just put those detailed strokes in there. There we go, detailed strokes all the way to the bottom. Okay, that's looking nice. Then I take my titanium white, mixing that with a bit of the Pacific blue. So I've almost got a white tone, but not quite. And then I follow that across. And this is where you need to have the full depth of the brush working for you. See that lovely fall? I like that, that's nice. And then I just tap it right at the top, like that. And we've got that lovely push of the waterfall. Look at that, isn't that lovely? How are you going at home? Put your comments in the box down below, and I'll answer all the queries and questions you've got about how to paint this waterfall. I hope you're having a lovely day. I certainly am. And here we go, another one there, all the way to the bottom. Now we don't need to do the whole thing, just the tips. And then this, just the tips here, just the tips. There we go. I'm using a bit too much of the point. I want to use more of the side, getting this sort of flick motion going. Here we go. You only get one chance to get this right. That's it there. All the way down. Okay. Tiny little bit at the top when we're done. There we go. There we go there. Flick. And done. So now that is the background completed. So what we're going to do now, in my next video, I'm going to show you how to detail these sections in relation to bringing the midground to a point where it has a lot of detail and a lot of perspective as well. In my next video then I'll also show the detail of how this will start to pop forward and really create an interest for the viewer. So follow me, subscribe, and let's get the next one started.